Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at setting up and working with our intercooler water spray feature found in our Link G5 and G4X programming. Now, our intercooler water spray is found on OEM vehicles such as Mitsubishi Evolution and a Subaru WRX or Subaru STI. We want to use the intercooler water spray on those vehicles because it does improve the intercooler's efficiency. Spraying water externally on the intercooler core cools down and enhances that heat exchange process. So if the vehicle has it, we want to go ahead and definitely retain it and use it properly. So we want to program it here specifically in the software. Now, if you have a vehicle that has an inefficient intercooler, you can retrofit a spray bar and a water tank and a water pump to be able to spray the water onto the intercooler and do the same thing as what an OEM design and setup would have. Let's take a look at how to program this. Again, it's pretty straightforward. This shouldn't be a super long tutorial. Let's dig in here and see what we have to work with. So jumping in here, we have our fuel page. Let's move across here to our virtual/math page. It's where I have the access point to grab our intercooler water spray and our layouts. Let's go ahead and virtual math. We're going to find over here on the right side of the screen, we find IC spray. This is our water sprayer feature. Now, the first thing we need to assign is an output. Now, taking a look at setting this up here, we're going to be choosing typically an aux output, but we do have other options. We have ignition, we have injector outputs, so whatever you have as a spare will work for this control. Now, the aux output here, or whatever we're assigning here for the output control, this is normally going to be a low side output, and we're going to find that between the water pump and the link, we're going to have a relay because we can't directly drive and control that water pump. It's too much amp draw, it'll damage the link. So we put a relay between. Now we're going to be grounding the relay. And if we take a look at the bottom of the relay, there's going to be 4 pins. Pin 85 is going to be what we ground. Pin 86 is going to go to a Keon 12 volt power source. Pin 30 is going to go to a battery powered source or some kind of a voltage supply. And then pin 87 finally is going to go to power the pump. So when we ground pin 85, that's going to complete the transfer of power between pin 30 and 87, and it'll go ahead and power the actual water pump. Now, the water pump will have 2 wires. One's a power, one's a ground. So we want to go ahead and ground the wire from the water pump, and then we supply the power to the water pump from pin 87. So pretty simple circuit. Usually you want to run about a 30 or 40 amp relay, and we do want to have a fuse that's going into the relay. So pin 30, we want to go ahead and fuse that. Usually 10, 15 amps is going to be good for a water pump. So wiring simple, configuring that with the relay, we're going to go ahead and choose an output. I'll choose ignition 5 here for my particular vehicle. So the next thing we have here is our active state that we have to decide what we're doing with. So the active state, because I'm grounding pin 85, it'll be a low side state. Now, if you set up your relay so that you're sending power to pin 85, then you'd have to ground pin 86. It'll still complete that internal circuit for the relay. We would have to set that to a high side type of output. So it's going to be sending 12 volt, which is high. Low is going to be sending ground. Ground is what we're going to be dealing with. That's traditional for working with most relays, but it really depends on your wiring. So you have to take a look at what you're setting up and how you're configuring your relay. Okay, so the next thing we have here is our activation input. Now, the activation input here can be really simple. Usually if you're dealing with an OEM vehicle, so let's say Mitsubishi Evolution, this will have, for a plug-and-play G4X, for example, that's typically what you'll probably find yourself working with. You'll have a digital input that's assigned to the intercooler water spray button that's found on the dash. Now, USDM vehicles didn't get this, but European Mitsubishi Evolutions did. So you'll find you're going to find that on non-US market Evos. Subarus, I believe, in the USDM market, they did have the intercooler water sprayers on some of the earlier Subarus, but the later they got rid of it. And they did have that in Europe and Japan. So depending on the market, you may or may not have that button. Let's assume that because we're setting this up kind of in a universal fashion, we need to go in and configure the button. The button, when we push it, will tell the intercooler water spray that we want it to actually activate. You can think of this as an arming input, just as like a nitrous arming switch. It's going to tell the link, okay, we're ready to work with this. Now we need to meet the conditions for the intercooler water spray to actually start to work and start to do something. So the activation input, we can assign it to a digital input switch, or we can get a little bit more specific with this. And this is how I normally set things up. I actually want to set my activation input to a virtual aux channel. We can see we have our virtual aux channels available here. The virtual aux channel allows me to then set a general purpose to turn on the virtual aux, to turn on our activation input. So now what I can do with this is get a little bit more specific with my programming, because I don't have all of the programming language in my intercooler water spray feature here. I can actually set up my general purpose output, which controls the virtual aux, set up based on my switching input for my intercooler water spray, so the button when I want it to turn on, and set it up based on, let's say, vehicle speed, and also base it around, let's say, something like manifold pressure. So we don't want the intercooler water spray set up and working if we're in vacuum, and we don't want the intercooler water spray to spray if we're not moving above, let's say, 10 or 15 miles per hour. So we can get really specific with this. Let me just break down how to set this up. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.